Hello friends. Today we have the final episode about Ankara in a series of episodes that we have already made on this channel. Today we will visit two significant museums in the center of Ankara. Each of them is the personification of the new Turkey and the new government. The first museum is the Museum of the War of Independence, which is known to all Turks since their school days. And the second museum is the Museum of the Republic. It is also called the building of the Second Parliament of modern Turkey. Let us start with the first museum. To immerse you in the history of 100 years ago and tell how the war for independence was waged by the Turkish leader Ataturk against the attacking Greeks and the Entente countries. Today, the first museum is a building with displays of weapons and artifacts from the Revolutionary War in a stately two-story stone building. This house is not simple. The building we entered was used as the first building of the Turkish Grand National Assembly until 1924. Roughly speaking, this is the parliament of the country under Ataturk, which worked in wartime, when the battles for the independence of Turkey were in full swing. The construction of the building, which today is used as a museum and served as the building of the Turkish Grand National Assembly, began construction in 1915. It was a building that was planned to be used as the clubhouse of the Union and Progress Society, the so-called Old Turkish Political Party. But let us add some history to our tour. Let me remind you that by the end of the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire had actually become a semi-colony, but some intellectuals had already become acquainted with the principles of liberalism. After the coup d'état of 1876, attempts to reform and create a constitutional state system were made by the new Ottomans. Sultan Abdulaziz then lost power, but Abdul Hamid II, who replaced him, declaratively recognized the draft constitution, after some time dissolved the newly minted parliament and moved to the good old personal power. A series of Russian-Turkish wars ended with the declaration of independence of the Balkan countries, Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania. The national liberation movements of the Balkan peoples began. Bosnia and Herzegovina became part of Austria-Hungary, Cyprus went to England. In the early 1880s, France occupied Tunisia and Great Britain occupied Egypt. The defeated, young Turks were not deprived of their own radical wing of young officers. In those days, the 12-year-old son of a small timber merchant, a former customs officer, entered the preparatory military school in Thessaloniki, where the teacher gave him the name Kemal, that is, perfection. In 1896 he was enrolled in a military school in Macedonia and then in an Ottoman military college in Istanbul. In terms of performance at the academy, Kemal was the 8th out of 459 graduates. For this, he received the rank of captain of the general staff, which gave him the opportunity to become part of the Turkish military elite. At that time, a congress was held in the capital, the meeting of which became fateful for the young Turks. They had to leave the country and settle in Paris. However, the ideas of the Young Turk movement had already reached the Academy of the General Staff, and young Kemal joined it. It all started with reading the then forbidden literature, the Parisian publications of the Young Turks. After graduating from the academy, Kemal was arrested on charges of unlawful criticism of the regime. He was kept in custody, after which he was sent to serve on the outskirts of the empire, in Damascus. There he served in the garrison. In the same place, the future Kemal Ataturk begins to form the revolutionary organization, Motherland and Freedom. Already during the First World War, Turkey, which has its own grounds for conducting hostilities, with the help of Germany, tried to modernize the fleet. These tasks were largely due to an unsuccessful attempt to conquer the Caucasus. The new government in Russia decided to conclude a truce at sea even before the signing of the peace. Negotiations in Odessa in December 1917 ended with a truce, which ensured the freedom of merchant shipping on the Black Sea. Further along the Brest Peace of Turkey, Kars, Ardagan and Batum departed. In the autumn of 1918, the British launched decisive offensives in Mesopotamia and on the Syrian-Palestinian front. The Turkish front was broken through at a distance of 40 kilometers. In Palestine, the Turks were finally defeated. On September 29, Bulgaria capitulated. According to the terms of surrender, the Entente troops received the right to move across its territory in the direction of the Turkish border. The Turkish Empire collapsed. The Turkish government changed on October 19, 1918, and on October 30, Turkey's surrender was signed on board the English battleship Agamemnon in Mudros. This truce left the Black Sea Straits open to Entente ships, providing them with access to the Black Sea, demobilized the Turkish army, and also led to the occupation of all its military, economic and strategic centers. Immediately after the signing of the Mudros Capitulation, the Germans urgently began to leave Turkey. In mid-November 1918, British troops landed in Constantinople. The Straits region and a number of strategic points in Turkey were occupied by the Allied forces. This was a turning point in the history of Turkey. Other countries were arguing about its fate, and would certainly decide this issue not in its favor. All states had their own opinion about the future of the Turkish lands, but the Greeks showed the greatest interest as to their ancient territory. The Prime Minister of Greece, in early 1919, offered to transfer Istanbul and western Anatolia to Greece. The Greeks began on May 15, 1919, at the same time the Greek army occupied Izmir. For Kemal Pasha, which means General Kemal, this became a strong incentive. He began an uprising against the Sultan's government of Turkey. On May 19, 1919, Mustafa Kemal, as an inspector of the 9th Army, arrived at the port of Samsun. There he settled down at the headquarters, looked closely at the situation and transmitted special encrypted telegrams to his supporters. He makes persuasive speeches to the residents. Alexander Zhevikov described that situation very eloquently. The project of Kemal, Rauf and Fuad is extremely clear. In order to save the homeland, it is necessary to create a free national government in Anatolia, since the legitimate government cooperates with enemies. Kemal was to form the National Liberation Army of Turkey, fight the Armenians in the northeast, the Greeks in the west, and also the occupation of the Entente. March 16, 1920. After the official invasion of Istanbul, hostile troops for the Turks and the dissolution of the still existing Majlis 2 days later, it was decided to create a new Majlis in Anatolia. Yes, we are talking about a new parliament. However, despite the fact that Ankara was chosen by Ataturk as the headquarters for holding such a meeting, this city did not have a building of the required size and equipment. After that, it was decided to renovate and use this club building, the construction of which had to be completed. On April 23, 1920, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey was opened in this building, where today a large number of different exhibits are displayed. Then it was an emergency authority. It combined legislative, executive and judicial powers. The Red Army provided serious assistance to the government of Mustafa Kemal. In 1920, Mustafa Kemal turned to the Soviet government for this. He wrote, "We undertake to link all our work and all our military operations with the Russian Bolsheviks, in order to drive out the imperialist forces that occupy our territory. We ask Soviet Russia in the form of first aid to give us 5 million Turkish liras in gold, weapons and ammunition in the amount that should be clarified during negotiations." 200 kilograms of gold from Soviet Russia arrived in Ankara that same autumn, and this was not the only entry. In the period from 1920 to 1922, weapons were also supplied to the Kemalists. 40,000 rifles, 327 machine guns and 54 guns. Kemal, in response, sent 2 gunboats with a displacement of 410 tons to Novorossiysk. Regarding the Bolshevik assistance, Kemal Atatürk spoke in this hall of the Parliament of the New Turkey. The victory of the New Turkey over the Anglo-French and Greek occupiers would have been associated with incomparably greater sacrifices, or even completely impossible, if not for the support of Russia. She helped Turkey both morally and financially. And it would be a crime if our nation forgot about this help. In March 1921, an agreement was signed in Moscow between the RSFSR and the government of the Turkish Grand National Assembly. According to this agreement, Batum was assigned to Georgia. Kars and Ardagan were given to Turkey. The parties pledged not to conduct subversive activities against each other. Well, and then the Lausanne Peace Treaty of 1923 ended the war for the independence of Turkey. The new borders of Turkey no longer included such vast territories as in the Ottoman Empire, but now it was a republic, and Mustafa Kemal, who took the name Ataturk, that is, the father of the Turks, became its first president.
Да, и буржуйка. Ты фотографировал здесь?
Now we come to the second building. Before us is the Republican Museum, also known earlier as the Building of the Second Parliament of Turkey. The Parliament of Kemal Atatürk and the New Turkey moved here from the previous mansion in 1924. Today there is also an interesting museum. Let us go through the corridors and rooms. We have just visited the former building of the Turkish Parliament, now the Museum of the War of Independence, which was used during the Turkish War of Independence for a slightly different purpose. There were small rooms, a small hall heated by stoves. In a word, the previous building was small and uncomfortable. Thus, after the proclamation of the Republic in 1923, a new and larger building was built to the southwest of the former building. The architect of the new building was Vedat. Parliament moved to this new building on September 18, 1924. Until 1960, all Turkish parliaments met in this building. It's hard to imagine, but from the 2nd to the 11th parliaments of Turkey, they were held here. After 1960, the building served as the headquarters of the Central Treaty Organization. After the dissolution of this organization in 1979, the building was handed over to the Ministry of Culture and the ministry redesigned the building into a museum. The museum itself was opened on September 30, 1981 in the year of the centenary of the birth of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Photographs of all former Turkish presidents and prime ministers are exhibited here, as well as all banknotes and coins issued during the era of the Republic. There are also photographs, stands and models about the development of the country after the proclamation of the Republic. It must be said separately that during his reign, women received equal rights with men, the existence of surnames was recognized. The new economic system brought Turkey to the modern level. The indisputable authority of Ataturk is felt in this country to this day. The Republican Museum is one of the many attractions of the Turkish capital. The building was designed by the famous architect Mehmet Vedat Tek, an outstanding Ottoman and Turkish architect, in 1923. It was originally used as the Republican Party House and was later converted into the Second Parliament building. There are 7 rooms on the first floor of the museum. One of them originally housed the accounting hall, which hosted the Grand National Assembly of Turkey. Now there are photographs and light panels describing the events of those times. To the right of it is the hall where the Second Grand National Assembly of Turkey took place. This is a fairly large hall with a second floor, where the mannequin of Ataturk is now, silently watching what is happening in the hall. Here in the hall there is the chair of the Speaker of the Parliament, the chair of the Orator and the Department of Bailiffs. Today, the museum displays personal belongings, documents and photographs also of President Mahmut Jalal Bayar. On the second floor of the Republican Museum, there used to be a presidential suite, a hall for receiving foreign delegations, rooms for the personal secretary of the president, the prime minister and the chairman of the assembly. Their decoration has survived to this day in its original form. In fact, you can see a large number of Ataturk's personal clothes in the museum. Since such a cult of personality is present in the country, then all his clothes are in the form of a museum exhibit under a showcase. There are newspaper clippings from that period. As well as the national flag of the Ottoman Empire, 2 by 2 meters, this flag of 1918. In addition to Ataturk, I will also touch on the fate of the second president of the Turkish Republic. His name is Mustafa Ismet İnonu. This, one might say, is the right hand of Kemal Atatürk, his main associate. Mustafa İsmet İnonu was born in Izmir in 1884. After graduating from the military school in Sivas, he entered the Artillery Cadet Corps in Istanbul. In 1906 he graduated with honors from the military academy. He took an active part in the Balkan Wars, participated in the First World War, served on the Eastern and Syrian fronts during the Second World War. In 1920, the politician actually joined the national struggle for the independence of Turkey. Immediately after the proclamation of the Republic, Mustafa Kemal invited his friend to become prime minister. And in 1938, after the death of Ataturk, he was elected the new president. In 1972, he died as a result of a heart attack, and already in 1973 in Ankara, he was buried in Anıtkabir, not so far from Ataturk.
Да, я уже сфотографировал.
Yok mu korkutucu?
Сейчас.
Смотри, голубенький. Смотри.
We have already made an episode about Anıtkabir on the channel. Be sure to look. In general, such strong changes in Turkey could not but affect ordinary citizens. One of the first reforms of Kemal Atatürk was the elimination of the Sultanate and the Caliphate, which meant not only a change in power, but also cutting off religion from it. Turkey is proclaimed a republic, and Mustafa Kemal becomes its first president. During the following reforms of Kemal Atatürk, the Sharia court was abolished, religious schools came under the control of the state, the Quran was translated into Turkish, Friday ceased to be a day off, marriages became civil, polygamy was forbidden, citizens were required to wear a European costume. The Gregorian calendar appears in Turkey, both the Turkish language and the alphabet are reformed, and the entire education system becomes unified. Women were practically equal in rights with men. They were able to be elected to parliament, vote, could study at universities, got the right to divorce. In the 20s of the 20th century, the banking sector was formed in Turkey, land was allocated for the development of agriculture, railways again belonged to the state, civil and criminal codes appeared. Istanbul ceases to be the main city. Ankara becomes the new capital, thus symbolizing a complete break with the legacy of the Ottoman Empire. The significance of Ataturk's reforms for Turkey is comparable to the reforms of Peter the Great for Russia. They were difficult for the country, but absolutely necessary for the transformation of a traditional state soaked through with corruption, where Islam was fused with power, into a secular state. Ataturk managed not only to reform the country, but also to preserve its integrity, create a national identity, free it from foreign influence, and instill European values that are still relevant today. Kemalism, based on 6 principles, republicanism, nationalism, secularism, statism, revolutionism, still resonates in the hearts of the Turks, who not only revere the leader, but created a real cult of his personality. That, perhaps, is all. We got such a quick express tour. Thanks that watched up to this point. Well, I recommend that you watch other videos about Turkey, Russia, Georgia, Belarus, United Arab Emirates on this channel. There is a lot of historical overtones. Think, you'll like it. Subscribe to the channel in advance, press the bell and do not miss new releases. Also, if you have the opportunity, you can make a small donation in order to the releases were even brighter and more intense. To do this, it is enough to make a translation by the screenshot on the video, or use the links in the description under this video. God bless you from adversity. And we'll see you in future episodes. Don T. Skip. Well, that seems to be all that was worth briefly talking about these places. Be sure to study history, it is a useful and multifaceted science. And leaving the building we find ourselves on Republic Avenue. From where you can see the Yellow Mansion, Ankara Palace or Ankara Vac Hotel. In fact, in the early years of Turkey's existence, this building served as a social institution for parliamentarians and a guest house for official guests in Ankara. The building has witnessed many important events in Turkey's political life. It is a historic building that is still in use as the state guest house.